Dylan! You son of a bitch.
What's up, folks? This is Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. And today, I'm here to celebrate because we won. Wizards has backed down. They're dropping their attempt to take away the OGL 1.0A. But even so, I think that this event has brought to our attention just how valuable these creators are to our community, to the gaming space, and to the next evolution in what that gaming is going to be. So today is a little bit of a celebration video because, to quote Freddie Mercury, we are the champions, my friends. But what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about my 5 favorite OGL 1.0A games and why you should be playing them. But in addition to the reasons that I give for each individual game, you should also be playing these games because these are the creators that went to bat for the community when this whole fiasco with Wizards came up. I received numerous emails from different indie publishers that I had bought product through this past week before Wizards backed down from their previous plan, and all of them were steadfast in that they would not be bending the knee. So we need to support these guys, we need to buy their products, and we need to play their games and evangelize those games because some of these guys don't have the marketing budget to do it themselves. So without further ado, here are my 5 favorite OGL games. And first up, we have Pathfinder, 2nd edition. Pathfinder you can get in this nice softback, pocket-sized guide, or you can get the full-on huge hardback. I like these at the table because they are much more simple to stick to the side and grab as you need them. But what are the advantages of Pathfinder 2E? Well, it's going to have great character optimization options, even more so than Dungeons & Dragons 5E. It's going to have awesome support because Paizo is a bigger company than a lot of the other indies are. I mean, after all, they are the ones who are responsible for creating the Orc license. Pathfinder also is going to take a little bit of a different approach to some of the existing ancestry tropes. So, for example, their goblins are more whimsical fairy type goblins. They're still pretty dark. I mean, they eat horses and dogs and stuff. But they're a little bit funnier, a little bit more comic relief than what the goblins are in most D&D campaigns. And everything just takes a little bit more high fantasy, heroic of an approach in Pathfinder. Another thing mechanically that Pathfinder does particularly well is it takes the during combat actions that aren't actually attacks and makes them valuable and useful to the game. I'm going through the Abomination Vaults right now with a group of 4 players. Have been going through that for the last year, and they very, very frequently don't take more than 1 attack in a round because they're using all of their other actions that they can. They're demoralizing, they're fainting, all of these different options. They're trying to do knowledge checks to see if they can figure out more about their opponents. That's something you don't see as much in other game systems, and Pathfinder does it quite well. Now, one caveat to Pathfinder on my list is that apparently it's become so successful with the Wizards hate that currently it's hard to find copies of it. But rest assured, Paizo's going to get those printed up and you'll be able to find them soon enough. And that's why my number 5 OGL favorite game is Pathfinder 2nd edition. And my number 4 is going to be familiar to a lot of folks that are familiar with the OSR movement. This is Old School Essentials. Old School Essentials can be as simple as this one book. This is the core rules tome. This is for classic fantasy. This is an exact replication of the BX Mulvey Cook basic rules, just reformatted and better organized. I've actually played with just this book through multiple dungeons and had a great time doing it. The advantages of the Old School Essentials game, or any Mulvey Cook OSR, but this is, in my opinion, the Cadillac of those. The advantage is that it's fast. You can create a character in less than 10 minutes. You can create a dungeon on the fly, and it's also quite deadly. You're going to want to use retainers, followers in this game, because there's going to be a body count, and you don't want all the characters to be part of that. Rules are simple. There is not a rule for everything in the world, so a lot of times the referee is going to make the call on the spot how this is going to work. They keep skills simple. You just roll under your ability score. But the classes in the basic rules tome might not be for everybody's liking. There's only 7 classes. There's Fighter, Mage, Thief, Cleric, and Dwarf, Elf, and Halfling. That's right, races are classes in that game. But if you want to go a little bit deeper, a little bit more complexity in your game, you can get the advanced version. It comes in 2 rules tomes, or you can get a box set. So with that, it's going to add the character options from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons from the first edition, including the classes from the Unearthed Arcana tome, as well as the Player's Handbook. You're also going to be able to separate race and class if you so desire, and it will still maintain that quick, easy gameplay that basic D&D is known for. And another advantage of this is that you're going to be able to pick up any of your favorite classic modules and play them with little to no conversion right there on the fly. So, for example, I'm going to be running some folks through the Keep on the Borderland, and I'm going to be running some folks through the Isle of Dread within the next few months, and I am going to use this system right here. So that is why Old School Essentials is my number 4 favorite OGL RPG. At number 3, I have a bit of a dark horse choice. This is Mutant Crawl Classics by Goodman Games. Mutant Crawl Classics is a take on their Dungeon Crawl Classics game, but it is different enough that I do consider it its own game, even if it is compatible with Dungeon Crawl Classics. So with this one tome, you have all the rules you need to play the game. You can play mutants, you can play manimals, you can play tree people, plantians, you can play a variety of different human characters. And what makes this game different is it is a great way to recreate a Thundar the Barbarian or even He-Man style of game. Anything that has that science fiction combined with the fantasy, this is a great way to do it. The game by default is set up in a post-apocalyptic world where the current level of technology knowledge is kind of primitive, but all of the technology from the past century still exists. So you'll get the experience of having players stumble upon different technologies and try to use it in interesting ways, and it will be quite interesting and fun. It also has a real gonzo element to it. There's some incredible critical hit and fumble tables. There are some amazing mutant powers, psionics and physical mutations and all of the like. Also the monsters in it are very interesting. Of course, just like Dungeon Crawl Classics, you're kind of encouraged to make your own monsters. But another thing with Mutant Crawl Classics, similar to Dungeon Crawl Classics, is that they have a great line of modules which will give you great inspiration for creating monsters of your own. And the Mutant Crawl Classics line, I have not met a module that I didn't find fun and inspiring. As a side note, if you do decide that you want to give Mutant Crawl Classics a try, I highly encourage you to run on over to Mud Puppy Games. That is the company owned by Jim Wampler, who wrote Mutant Crawl Classics. and he has a line of adventures. I believe it's called Original Adventures Mutated. So it's kind of a take on Goodman Games' Original Adventures Reincarnated, but he takes them and makes them spin into a science fiction sort of take. So there's one for Keep on the Borderlands, and I'm failing to remember the second one. I've got it, but I don't have it with me. Also, he's got a great line of zines called The Scientific Barbarian, which will give you classes and adventures and monsters and ideas for your Mutant Crawl Classics game. But this is Mutant Crawl Classics by Goodman Games, and it is my number 3 favorite OGL system. And what would Mutant Crawl Classics be without its big brother, Dungeon Crawl Classics? So my number 2 is going to be Dungeon Crawl Classics. Dungeon Crawl Classics is a re-envisioning of BX D&D. It keeps races class. You have the same standard 7 classes that you would find in Old School Essentials, for example. But it's got a wildly different take on them. Matter of fact, Dungeon Crawl Classics has the most interesting warrior class that I've seen in any system. It makes the warrior fun, capable, and interesting. It also takes some of the lesser played classes like the halfling and gives them enough of a new spin that people are going to want to try them. Just a heads up, halflings in Dungeon Crawl Classics are little whirling murder machines wielding 2 weapons at the same time, and they are quite interesting. So where Dungeon Crawl Classics differentiates itself from the competition is going to be like Mutant Crawl Classics in its critical hits and fumbles, its gonzo nature. Characters from first level could potentially do campaign-altering things if they get a good enough roll, particularly with magic in Dungeon Crawl Classics. Every spell gets at least a full-page layout with the different results that you can get based on a high roll, and because you can actually burn your statistics to increase that roll as well as your luck, you can get up in the 30s quite easily on a d20 roll, and when you do, you can do some, like I said, world-changing things. Now, that's not to say Dungeon Crawl Classics is easy, because it's not. It's quite brutal. I keep a death stamp at my desk just for whenever I play Dungeon Crawl Classics, because a character always dies when you play Dungeon Crawl Classics. But it's a fun game. It's quite gritty while still being over-the-top gonzo fun. And the line of adventures for it is unlike anything else you're going to find in the OSR community. They're definitely, in some ways, throwbacks to the stuff that was coming out in the 80s. But then in other ways, they are quite visionary in the way that they approach different subjects. And I would highly encourage you, if you have not, give Dungeon Crawl Classics a try. Another thing about Dungeon Crawl Classics is that they've got a great quick start version of the game that you can pick up online. I believe the PDF is free, or you can pick up the paper version for like $10. Has an adventure, rules for creating characters, and the rules that you need to play the game. And Dungeon Crawl Classics is going to be a game that is going to be a favorite at your table. I can almost guarantee it. I've played it with several different groups. I've never had a group that didn't leave the game saying, wow, that was really different and I want to do it again. So that's why my number 2 OGL game is going to be Dungeon Crawl Classics. All right, here we are. We're at my number 1. Now I will tell you, this is the first game on this list that requires 2 books. You do need to get the player's manual and the referee's manual, but you're going to want to, because these are fantastic books. The artwork in them is beautiful. The mechanics are very sound. What makes Hyperborea, which is the game that used to be known as Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea, what makes it different is that unlike most OSR games that take BX in a different direction, Hyperborea actually uses Advanced Dungeons & Dragons as its base game. Now, for those of you like me old enough to have played Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, you know that it could be charmingly clunky, let's say. There were a lot of things that were rather unclear. The way that the rules were organized sometimes led to a lot of flipping through pages, and it wasn't always the most fun at the table unless you were willing to just kind of throw out some of those things and just roll with it, which most of us did. We didn't go by the letter. Well, what Jeffrey Talanian did here was he took that base game, cleaned it up, reorganized it, similar to how Gavin did with OSE, and he also added a lot to it. So everything in Hyperborea relates to the world of Hyperborea, from Clark Ashton Smith. It also has a lot of influence from Robert E. Howard, his Hyborian Age. Also, H.P. Lovecraft gets his way in there. You'll see that in the modules. You'll see it in the world. You'll see it in the monsters that are in the system. So mechanically, what Jeff has done here is pretty incredible. He has stayed very true to the source material while making it much more understandable and much more usable at the table. One of my favorite things that he did was he took the thieves and took the percentile system with the thieves and just made it a D12 roll, which I love because we don't use the D12 enough. He also made several subclasses. I believe there's 26 or 27 different classes when you count the subclasses in this game that all have a very unique flair to them. They make it unnecessary to have multi-classing because they all kind of cover some of those same niches that a multi-class would while still having unique flair on top of that. Another thing that's different about his game is that it's going to be human-centric. There are no demi-human races in Hyperborea. So anything that is not human is probably going to be in the monster manual section of the game. With this game, you could easily sit down and you could play any of the AD&D or AD&D 2nd Edition modules with very little or no conversion. You could also do yourself a favor and buy some of the great modules that have been released by Northwind Adventures for Hyperborea. They are a lot of times directly inspired by specific stories of Robert E. Howard, Clark Ashton Smith, or H.P. Lovecraft. And a lot of times right up at the front of the module it'll tell you that this adventure was inspired by that work. So with this game system, you are going to be able to play a swords and sorcery game with a system you're familiar with, and if like me you spent a lot of time in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons or 2nd Edition, you're not going to be disappointed in what you find here. My favorite OGL game. So this has been Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Again, thank you all for giving Wizards your feedback, protecting individual independent publishers like Northwind Adventures, Goodman Games, Necrotic No. Definitely appreciate that because these folks have brought a lot of great stories to my tables and hopefully yours as well. And I hope this list helps you find a way to support these publishers while still increasing your gaming goodness at the same time. So until next time, good gaming and God bless.